Do you expect to be Speaker of the House before the midterm elections?
We are on our way to taking back control of the House of Representatives. We'll see what happens with Republican resignations and if something interesting occurs next year. But as Democrats, we're going to continue to fight to lower the high cost of living, continue to fight to fix our broken health care system, and continue to fight to make sure that in this country, you work hard, you play by the rules, you should be able to live the good life.
Yeah, that's the Democrats sounding optimistic less than a year out from the midterm elections. But is their campaign message really going to resonate with their voters? Hello, everybody. I'm Joey Jones, along with Alicia Acuna, Lydia Hu, and Tom Shalhoub, and this is the final hour of our big weekend show. When Democrats aren't demonizing the Trump administration, their other campaign message has been lowering costs. There's just one problem. Prices soared when they were in power, and they had 4 years to fix it. Prices rose by an average of over 21% under President Biden, with gas alone soaring 31%. And wages, they actually shrank 4% when adjusting for inflation. Now they're using Obamacare subsidies to rally their voters.
People are seeing their health insurance premiums double or triple. We have a chance to do something. Either we're going to pass this by forcing this vote, or we are going to get this on legislation, or we are going to march into the midterms and beat them despite their resistance. If they don't want to do anything about people's costs and their grocery bills and their health care and pummel them with these punishing Trump tariffs, then we will simply have to beat them in the midterms.
Yeah, the obvious there is that Obamacare didn't lower costs. That's why they need subsidies. In fact, they're rising at their highest rate since it was passed in 2010. Tuesday's race in Tennessee, that might prove as a bellwether for the midterms and whether their messaging is working with voters. Afton Bain, the AOC of Tennessee, she's been touting the party line.
We've got 48 hours to flip this congressional district and have been dogged about the message of affordability. And that's not what I'm hearing in the district. Grocery costs are high, utility bills are high, rent is high, and there's no kind of end in sight. And so my message has been one to lower costs, and I think it's resonating across the district, which is why this race is so close.
Yeah, hedging bets to do the spin. Democrats are already looking at it as a victory, even if she loses.
I'm confident that it's going to be a close race in the Tennessee special election, which is shocking in and of itself, because this is a district that Donald Trump just won by 22 points. And Republicans are scrambling to hold on to a deep red district.
Lydia, I won't beat up on Hakeem there because I heard Republicans do kind of the same thing with Virginia and New Jersey a couple of weeks ago. That's kind of politics. But to go back to kind of the meat and potatoes of this, we were talking about the Obamacare subsidies and how Democrats are really saying, you know, if Republicans don't pass the subsidies, then they hate Americans and they want them to pay a lot for health care, when in fact the subsidies themselves are kind of indicative of the true problem.
Yeah, I mean, since we've gotten Obamacare, we've seen a couple of things happen. We were promised that if you had your doctor, you could keep your doctor. That was a promise broken. I think we all remember that. And then we were also told that this is going to be a leveling off and a great equalizing for health care costs and keep our health care costs low. That didn't happen either. In fact, the exact opposite is happening. Why? Because so many of the people that are electing into Obamacare are people that are older, that have health needs. And so there's a disproportionate number of people that are taking from the system, that you don't have enough young people that are paying into the system. There's got to be a fix with the kind of the economy of how healthcare is working there. The one thing that I will say on this affordability issue and how it's playing out in Tennessee, because Afton Bain says that she's going to vote to continue these subsidies, which we know is not the answer. Give the one big beautiful bill, now law, time to play out, because baked into that next year are tax breaks, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, as well as some tax breaks, yes, for companies, but they're going to be able to, write off and depreciate their investments. They're going to be able to write off capital expenditures. I know these are big fancy words, but basically it means it's going to give companies an opportunity to invest more, create opportunity. Joe Lavorgna, who's an economic advisor to Secretary Scott Bessent, has a great op-ed piece that everyone should read. It explains how this is going to lead to productivity and opportunity in this country. So Big picture, it means more money in your pocket and more opportunity in this country. But in order to stick to that plan, you got to keep the Republicans in office.
When you have a chance to bring on Fox Business, you wind them up and let them go. You learn something. Alicia, on that topic of like affordability and the Democrats' narrative of kind of making things affordable, even President Trump has kind of used that tagline, adopted it. I like to take a 30,000-foot view. I don't look at it as President Biden created all the problems, but he had all the opportunity to fix them. I mean, between 2020 and 21, we spent $7 trillion, I believe it was, in not recovering from COVID, but pretending like it didn't happen. There's going to be some economic fallout from that. Right. Joe Biden had a 4-year runway to do something about it. And the reason why I bring that up is President Trump isn't going to be able to do this year what he did in 2016. It's a different situation.
It is a different situation, and I think that Democrats are counting on voters being impatient with the big, beautiful bill now law. Because, as you said, wait to see what happens, what comes to play out for people. But I think folks are impatient. They're tired of waiting, and the Democrats could be very effective in taking advantage of that and messaging on that as well. You don't hear them saying, let's go back to Biden's plan. Let's go back to the Biden years. That's not what they're doing. They're running against Trump, but they're not going to be running against Trump because he's not going to be out there. That's going to be an interesting trick, I think, for them as they go after Republicans and they're running against Trump, who's not on the ticket.
Tom, when you look at all of this, the Democrats trying to make a push for the midterms, doing it through these special elections, calling them bellwethers. President Trump isn't on the ballot in this next election cycle. How much does that matter?
Nothing matters at all. Nothing matters. The messaging doesn't matter. The quality of the candidates doesn't matter. They have had terrible candidates and still won elections. Yeah. That ridiculous thing that happened in Virginia, Abigail, remember that debate? I mean, it doesn't matter how badly you do in a debate. Abigail was sitting there, Abigail Spanberger, staring ahead like a deer in the headlights. She couldn't answer any questions. Didn't matter. She won. She ran with the AG there in Virginia, a guy whose name is kind of similar to yours. He remember him?
Jay Joneses.
Jay Jones.
Jay Jones.
He didn't, his text came out. He wanted to murder his opponents. Nothing matters except turnout, and we have to stress that with Republicans. All that matters is turnout, and they're going to do great in the midterms because they always do. And there's going to be a lot of left-wing money behind them.
You just mean like the party that's got the party not in power?
Yeah, the party not in power. And Republicans don't show up to, off-year elections. Yeah. They don't do well, and so they're not going to do well. So get ready. These Democrats, like I said, they're terrible, but it doesn't matter.
Well, maybe we can prove them wrong. We'll see. All right, Democrats are overly confident they've solved their problem with young men, with DNC Chair Ken Martin saying, quote, I never want to hear again that the Democratic Party has a problem with young men. His proof, that hit an octave there. Turned in one of those transformers. All right, young men voted for Democrats in elections earlier this month in heavily blue cities and states. But there's a question on whether the party needs to lean into its more moderate members or appease the far left base, such as Mamdani voters. But the Dems are likely overconfident, as recent polling shows, that Gen Z voters are more confident in Republicans than Democrats. Now, here's my theory on polls. The Mark Twain is, what is it, stats and more lies. You can take numbers and kind of massage them. It depends on what's the question asked, how is it asked. But this is what we do know. We know that young women decided that last round of special election or off election votes. So maybe it's that they just don't care about young men voting for them anymore?
I don't know about that. I know in 2024, young men did matter quite a bit for Republicans. That did matter. But then you have this off-year election, and then Democrats are running to the cameras to say, oh, look, young men, they're back with us because, in New Jersey, the governor's race, the Democrat beat the Republican by double-digit numbers with young men. However, when you talk about these off-year elections, which is Democrats are really holding on to this really tight, is you're talking about two candidates who ran with a more moderate economic message and affordability. And then you have the other one who won, who did very well with young men, is Mamdani. So in that, you can see how there will be so much tension inside the Democratic Party of where do we go from here? And Democrats do have a way of imploding their gains very quickly.
Yeah. And Afton Ben, I wasn't saying she's not going to do well. She's going to lose, and she's going to lose bigger. It's all fake. She's not popular.
it's because she says she hates country music. I
Yes.
think that's the biggest misstep she's made so far.
She should have just been specific. If she had said, I hate new country, she would have got a bunch of Republican votes. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, maybe. You know, separate from the polling, I can only say, just being a person living here, it feels like the Democrats have not treated men and young men well. I mean, I feel like they've spent the past several years kind of penalizing them for being too privileged or too white or too masculine or too this or too that. And just, I have noticed that being the mother of a young boy and thinking about raising him, you know, what role models he has. And I think that's really going to come back to bite the Democrats in the rear, so to speak, you know, when they're turning to these young men now that they've penalized for so long and asking them for a vote.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a step back, I mean, go all the way back to like the Me Too movement, right? You start by outing predators like Harvey Weinstein. And then you go all the way to like shaming men for mustering up the courage to ask a young woman out on a date in a respectful way. And it's this idea that like once you get the ball rolling, oh, let's ride this car because it seems fun and people are jumping on board. And then who loses is the spirit of young men. This idea that participation trophies go against the spirit of masculinity. Calling masculinity toxic because of the essence of it is going to hurt young men. But then you look at these polls and you see that it's 65% of 18 to 29 young men in New York City voted for Mamdani. And the next poll says that ages 18 to 29 Gen Z, that almost 5% more favor Republicans. So I think it depends on what you're asking them, what candidate you're putting in front of them, and what they're focused on in that election.
And also where they're located, where these voters are. The voters here in New York City are very different. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. So I think it also matters where you live.
And also, it doesn't count. Zoran does not count with young people. He doesn't count as Democrat. He's anti-establishment. That's
right.
where their vote went.
That's right. All right. While Democrats try to court young voters, the evidence suggests that their real support comes from aging liberals. And now they're upset that young people aren't showing up at protests. One Dartmouth professor writes in the New York Times that the absence is both a problem and a warning. This is reflected in the numbers. According to a recent poll, fewer young people say they attended the No Kings protest, and colleges around the only saw a handful of students attend protests that had thousands of people. The video tells the whole story.
I am terrified of the way our country is going.
Back in the day, people in the street got civil rights for individuals. Now, people in the street have to take democracy back.
They have rolled back almost every protection against pollution and climate change that they can.
Solidarity, I bring you solidarity from the Southern Workers Assembly.
Yeah, beware those bored fixed income voters.
Yeah, the whole No Kings protest just didn't land. I mean, what was that really about? The whole calling it of a No Kings, the fact that you could stage a protest like that around the country is indicative of the fact that we don't have a king because a king wouldn't allow that to happen. And I think young people everywhere kind of saw it. It was like this amorphous, I'm not really sure what this is. And the fact of the matter is that we are a system of checks and balances. We do know President Trump enjoys his executive power, but as we're seeing play out in the courts, there have been plenty of times in the courts. You know, I know we can criticize some of the judges have stopped him. It's playing out in the appellate court. The Supreme Court is considering a number of checks on his executive power in this term, so we'll see how that turns out. But I think the No Kings protest just didn't land, and I'd like to give credit to the young people because they're too smart for that.
You know, yeah, what does it say about young people? I mean, were they maybe too busy trying to go build a life for themselves to be out there doing it?
Yeah, but that reason actually wasn't good enough for this Dartmouth professor because he went through the list of possibilities of why this is happening, and he said, well, maybe it's because they think they can't afford things. Well, that's not good enough. You know, and then it's maybe they thought they were going to get arrested. Maybe they're online too much. None of these reasons were good enough, no matter what he expected to come back at him for making this argument was going to work, and it's because they weren't out there protesting because they were at work. The people for the No Kings protest, it didn't surprise me at all that the average age was so much older than what this professor wanted it to be because there were people who they're not on a fixed income. They're trying to make some money. They're not on a retirement.
Tom, I think it's because they were all so inspired by the Sydney Sweeney commercials. They were at American Eagle buying their jeans.
Yeah, or just home watching the commercials on TV. No, protests are stupid. They're for old people, and you could see that by the No Kings protest. I think young people The whole idea of No Kings was dumb, and young people recognize it for what it was. But no, they kind of live their life on their devices, and like, why should I show up? What you want me to get in a crowd? And like, these old, gray-haired leftists are reliving the glory days when they thought they actually did something, but they didn't.
Burning draft
Protests
cards,
never do
bras,
anything.
yeah.
Protests are just an expression of people, and when public opinion goes a certain way, then they get out there and protest. Then they take credit for it. Well, your dumb protests didn't do it. You didn't change public opinion with your protest, but they always think they did.
You know a great form of protest? Voting.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.